production, and the winner of that year, 1950.
I imagine while 3AW was playing the Caltex Theatre on 3DB would have been the Lux Radio Theatre in competition?
I believe that would be right, yes, on a Sunday night.
Yeah, but big names there like Robert Peach and Eva Carglin.
Yes.
And Elizabeth Wing.
It's true, and Margaret Christensen. After 9 o'clock, Graham Walton returns to the airwaves. You remember Graham?
Graham was also a popular program manager at one time, wasn't he? A program director in the 1980s, a Geelong boy. He and I started at 3AW the same week in 1971.
And he narrates very well a 50th birthday edition, when radio reached 50 years of age, which was about 10 years ago. 3AW produced this hour special. We'll be playing part of that at 9 o'clock.
Good.
And he traces a lot of the 3AW history, Rick.
Yes. Could I actually toss one at Philip here?
Yes.
He knew that the Catholic Hour was on at 9 and the Caltex Theatre was on at 8. What was the show before the Caltex Theatre?
At 7:30 on a Sunday night, would it have been the Quiz Kids with John Deese?
It was. You win the prize.
Well, thank you for that.
Very clever. Very
Incidentally, speaking of anniversaries, without boasting, Bruce and I, Rick, are just 4 weeks away from a year on Nightline. Doesn't time fly? I think it was the 25th of March last week, just a few days prior to Easter, that we took over the reins of Nightline, so we'll have another celebration in 4 weeks' time.
Dinner suit again?
Well, I thought tails on that occasion, don't you think?
That sounds fair. Now, I must say I've missed very few of those nights, and I find it absolutely the most entertaining nighttime radio. Wonderful stuff.
We have some terrific old themes tonight, including one from the TAA Hit Parade, which goes way, way back. There have been many different themes for the Sunday Night at 6 Hit Parade on 3AW, but perhaps this is the best known and the best loved of them all. It's played by the Russ Case Orchestra, and it's called There's Going to Be a Great Day.
Well, Russ Case, great memories. They're a bit of a trouble with the turntable there, unfortunately.
It's inclined to wow a little tonight, but we'll make allowances for that. And I suppose in the old days, they had all those sorts of problems on the air when they were playing 78s with steel needles.
Well, they'd have to replace the needle after they played every 78, and especially with a 12-inch like that, they'd go through perhaps 2 needles.
So I guess the atmospherics is just all the more background tonight to how it used to be.
Some of the announcers would come off air, their fingers like pincushions, literally bleeding from the amount of needles they've taken in and out of the arm.
Were there still steel needles when you started at KZ as a panel operator?
No, all that was left were the little holes where the needles used to be placed when they were worn.
Oh, right.
But we'll go to Colin now. Are you there, Colin?
Yeah, I am, mate. Yeah. Look, I've been listening to all the nostalgia, like it very much. But there's one bit that always intrigues me, and it was the most dramatic bit of radio I've ever heard, and it was Murray Nicol on Ash Wednesday. And I remember it's really stuck in my mind. I remember getting in a car after work, and there was Murray Nicol live from Adelaide watching his house burn down. And it was just overwhelming listening to it. Every time I've heard it replayed since, including tonight, there's always one bit missing, which is the most dramatic bit. And I was wondering whether Murray had an objection to it or something. Do you know the bit I'm talking about?
I do know the bit where he actually sees the house burning.
Yeah, he sees the house burning, and he says he's in danger, and he's there with children and women, and they're hiding behind the fence. And someone from the station comes in and says, "Isn't there someone there that can help you, like a fireman?" And Murray replies, "I am a bloody fireman." And then I think they cut the mark day at that stage.
I see.
And that's the absolute staggering bit of live radio. But every time it's replayed, including tonight, it's never mentioned. It's almost like Murray is too modest or something about it.
Oh no, he was a modest person, but there was no embargo on any of that tape. It was just part of the tape that I had, and we replayed it because of it. But thank you for that, Colin.
Before you go, that bit I repeated, that did actually happen. It's not a figment of my imagination, is it?
When he said, I am a fireman.
Yeah.
I can't recall ever hearing that. All I heard was when his house was going up and he was almost in tears describing the scene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Cole.
I thought I mentioned that. I thought he might have been too modest to have it replayed or something.
No. Thank you very much for the call, Cole.
Bye.
Good on you. Goodbye. And thank you, Rick, very much for coming in tonight. It's been really lovely, and your contribution to our birthday party.
Few memories good. Thanks. See you in a week's time.
It's been a little different tonight, and thanks for doing us proud by dressing for the occasion, Rick. And just a reminder, the auction is on 2 weeks from today at the Masonic Hall in Launders Street, Hawthorne.
The news at 9. Graham Walton looks back at 50 years, or 60 years as it turns out this year, of broadcasting on 3AW.
And in this hour, we'll be talking to John Hindle, and even though it's our birthday, we'll still have The Verse Comes First.
You're on Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady. Now, 3AW National Network News.
An expected top of 20 expected for tomorrow. At the moment, it's 16 in Melbourne at 9 o'clock. In this news, Paul Keating fires off at John Hewson in the lead-up to his economic statement, and catering at some of our top sporting events still under threat. Good evening, I'm Anthony Hudson. Prime Minister Paul Keating says he'll take John Hewson up on his tactic of playing the man in the lead-up to the federal election. Mr Keating this week releases his much-anticipated economic statement, saying it'll mean the largest single package of constructive measures produced by the Labor government. But he maintains it won't be the be-all and end-all of his career, and says he'll take the fight to John Hewson before the polls. Mr Keating has told 60 Minutes the GST package offered by the opposition will be seen by the electorate as an attack, and he believes the public won't buy it.
Dr. Hewson presents himself as the mild-mannered professor, as the sheep in sheep's clothing. The truth is he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's got the most radically conservative program of any conservative leader ever. He's going to produce a confrontation in this country no one has ever seen. He will make Malcolm Fraser look like a bleeding heart lefty.
An industrial row has put catering under threat at some of Melbourne's top sporting events for the next few weeks. The Federated Liquor Union says all sporting events are under threat because of the row over employer efforts to abolish penalty rates. Patrons at Melbourne's Caulfield race meeting were yesterday treated to free liquor and food when union members employed by a catering company at the track went on a snap strike. Spokesman Michael Phillips says the union's executive will meet on Wednesday to decide what areas will be hit next.
It could be the Fennec fight. It could be the World Series cricket. It could be the Foster's Cup, either Waverley or MCG. It could be a country race meeting. It could be a metropolitan race meeting. It could be the Trots. Anything. It could be a hotel, a major international hotel.
Federal Justice Minister Senator Michael Tate says he's been dumped from the top of Tasmania's Senate ticket because of infighting in the state's ALP branch. Mr Tate has been demoted to the unwinnable fourth position on the pre-selection ticket for next year's half-Senate election. National ALP Secretary Bob Hogg says he'll recommend to the executive that it takes over restructuring of the ALP in Tasmania and set aside the Senate pre-selections. Overseas and Israeli delegates have left Tel Aviv for a fourth round of direct talks in Washington with their counterparts from neighbouring Arab states and the Palestinians. Officials say the delegates have not been given a mandate to reveal details of an Israeli autonomy plan for the Palestinians. This round is due to open on Monday. Sport now, and the West Indies have cruised to a 10-wicket victory over Pakistan in the World Cricket Cup match at the MCG. With details, Andrew Moore.
After Pakistan scored 2 for 220 from their 50 overs, the West Indies cruised to victory in 47 overs, finishing at no wicket for 221. Des Haynes unbeaten on 93. Richie Richardson not out 20, with the man of the match, Brian Lara, forced to retire, hurt with a painful foot injury in the 37th over. He made 88 from only 101 deliveries. He and Des Haynes adding 175 before Lara forced to retire hurt. The only bright spot for Pakistan, fiery spells from Wasim Akram, who bowled very quickly. Earlier for Pakistan, Ramiz Raja scored an unbeaten 102. Andrew Moore in Melbourne.
Meantime, in the Sheffield Shield match at the Adelaide Oval, it's all set for an exciting final day. The Vicks go into day 4 leading by 320 runs after being 4 for 175 at stumps in their second innings, with Paul Nobes unbeaten on 76. The Vicks were handed a 145-run first innings lead when South Australia declared it 7 for 316 at tea. And in Foster's Cup match today played in Hobart, Fitzroy down North Melbourne by 2 points. News time is 4 minutes past 9. Melbourne's weather follows the break.
Here's nutritionist Louise Nicholson speaking with Dan Presser, Managing Director of the Sunraysia Natural Beverage Company.
Sunraysia 100% natural prune juice has really taken Australia by storm. Why? It's not just a great taste. Usually when you think of prune juice, you think of its laxative effect, but this isn't so, Dan.
That's right, Louise. Sunraysia prune juice is only a mild laxative, while being a great source of many vitamins and minerals. Sunraysia natural prune juice is high in carbohydrates, fibre, potassium, vitamin C and calcium. And at the same time, Sunraysia is low in salt and fat.
Sunraysia natural prune juice is also a good source of iron?
Yes, Louise, iron's essential for normal body function. It carries oxygen around the body and helps us breathe.
As the ad says, you can drink it hot or cold, and it's approved by the National Heart Foundation.
It certainly is. More people are discovering Sunraysia every day and enjoying it.
Thanks, Dan. Sunraysia 100% natural prune juice is available in 250ml, 1 litre and 2 litre glass bottles at all Coles and Safeway supermarkets.
Now a look at Melbourne's weather. Partly cloudy with a brief shower or two clearing, moderate to fresh southerly winds easing. The outlook for Tuesday becoming fine, a top in the low 20s. Wednesday and Thursday, fine conditions, and once again a top in the low 20s. On the bay, southwest to southerly winds of 15 to 20 knots, moderating to 10 to 15 knots in the morning, and afternoon sea breezes to 20 knots. Waves of 1 to 1.5 metres abating in the morning. After an overnight minimum of 11, we're headed for a top of 20 degrees tomorrow. At the moment, it's 17 in Melbourne. I'm Anthony Hudson, 1278 3AW, and you're with Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady.
And now Topolino's, who specialise in pizzas and home delivery. They're trading 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. 7 nights a week. And if you'd like a pizza now, you can ring 525-3344. Topolino's bring you the 9 o'clock special. Oh, Phil, before I go on, give us the answer to the lists that had something in relation with to each other.
We didn't ever get back to it, did we? I'll just repeat it one more time. There's a theme running between these movies and these actors. George Hamilton in Zorro, The Gay Blade. Peter Sellers in The Prisoner of Zenda. Yes. You might remember the hit song from that movie was called, was sung by Elvis Presley, was called Return to Zenda.
That's right, yes.
Mel Brooks in The History of the World Part 1.
Yes.
Lee Marvin in Cat Ballou. Hayley Mills in The Parent Trap. And Boris Karloff in The Black Room.
Do they all have blonde hair?
No.
I'm trying to think how Hayley Mills fits in with them.
This one, for the first time, has you stumped.
Because of her. I was just thinking this pert, petite little English girl with the blonde hair, pretty little thing.
I think this is too good to blow it right now. We might let this continue later in the next hour of Remember When.
What have in common with George Hamilton in The Gay Blade, Peter Sellers in
The Prisoner of Zenda, Mel Brooks in The History of the World Part 1, and Lee Marvin in Cat Ballou?
Did they all impersonate Hitler or something?
No. No, I'll tell you before the night is out.
Thank you. And now
Pleasure.
Ah, lovely. Well, pardon me. Back now to the 9 o'clock special. This was recorded on October the 24th, around about certainly 10, 15 years ago, on the celebration of the 40 years of broadcasting in Australia. Or the 50 years, I beg your pardon. Well, now we've cracked that figure, and we're now 60 years of age this weekend.
So what are some of the highlights we can look forward to in this special?
Some of the great serials we listened to on 3AW. Memories of Terry Deer and Mel Verco, and our favourite serials. So let's cross now and enjoy our 9 o'clock special on the 60th birthday of 3AW.
And it's a very good morning to our 8 o'clockers.
The Air Adventures of Biggles.
It's Hopalong Cassidy. With action and suspense, out of the Old West comes the most famous hero of them all, Hopalong Cassidy.
Tarzan, King of the A.
Control to CX4, control to CX4, all clear, all clear.
CX4 to control, CX4 to control, stand by. This is Hop Harrigan, coming in.
Today we remember some of the serials and variety programs which were so popular in radio's early years. I'll be back in a moment with one of the greatest.
Melbourne 3AW.
One of the few programs to bridge 4 decades was the George Edwards radio version of Dad and Dave. Originally produced in the 30s, it was still being repeated here in Melbourne as recently as 1961 and still attracting a large audience. Let's eavesdrop on Dad, Dave and Mabel as we listen to a very early episode of this classic.
We now present the first episode of Dad and Dave, a human story of 2 typical Australians, their families, their lives, their hopes, their doubts, their fears and their triumphs. The characters of Dad and Dave represent all that is sturdy, honest and resourceful in the great Australian outback. You'll laugh with them, you will sympathize with them, and perhaps their troubles may in some way remind you of your own. And perhaps their courage will inspire you. Now let us visit the homestead in Snake Gully, just off the road to Gundagai. It is a typical Australian homestead. There's a veranda running almost right round the house. In front of the house are a few trees and a small, well-kept garden. Now let us enter the homestead. It is night time, and in the living room we make the acquaintance of Dad and Dave. Dad is sitting at the table, laboriously writing, while Dave has just finished reading the daily paper.
What are you doing, Dan?
I'm very busy. 2 and 5 is, why don't you do something useful instead of sitting with your nose in the paper all night?
Oh, I finished the paper now.
4, so don't talk, I'm busy. 2 and 6.
What are you doing?
4, I'm working out something. 4 and 9 is 5, 7. I wonder what time your mother will be out.
Oh, Ted Ramsey said he'd bring her home. She should be here pretty soon now.
Well, why didn't you go over to the social?
Oh, well, Mabel wasn't going. They've got a sick calf over at her place. and she said she'd probably have to sit up all night with it.
6, well, yes, Mabel's a good girl, Dave. 4 and 2 is 6, and she'll make a good wife for a farmer.
Yes, that's what I think, Dad.
Well, why don't you ask her to marry you?
Oh, well, you know what it is. A fella's got to be able to make a home for a girl, and I don't know, but
Oh, you're not half the man I was. I remember in my young days the young fellas knew how to go courting.
Oh, that's all very well, Dad, but what have I got to offer Mabel? You know, we've never got over the depression.
Yes, I know it only too well. But you haven't got to think about things like that.
Why didn't you go to the social?
Oh, I've got some business to do here. 6 and 4 is 10, and 2 is 12, and... oh, dear. Why don't you slip over and see Mabel now?
Oh, it's a bit late, ain't it?
Well, when I was courting your mother, I used to go and see her every night, and she was always glad to see me, too.
Are you there, Mabel?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh.
Hello, Dave.
Hello. How are you this morning?
I'm a bit tired, but I think we'll save that cough all right.
Oh, that's good. Mum said you weren't at the social last night.
Well, you knew I wasn't going.
Yes. That's why I didn't go.
Are you going to the Ramsays evening next week?
Oh, I'll go if you go.
Oh, I'll be able to go, I think. We always go everywhere together, don't we, Dave?
You're right. I'd like to see someone else try to take you out.
Other men have asked me to go out with them.
Oh, I know that, but you wouldn't go, would you, Mabel?
Oh, of course not, Dave.
You know, someday, you and I may...
Yes, Dave.
Oh, well, you see, Mabel, it's a bit hard to explain. Are you going over to the station to see the train come in tonight?
Yes, I am. Are you going over?
Right, if you are.
Dave, what were you going to tell me just now?
Oh, well, we've been going about together for a long time, and I was just wondering... Oh, Mabel, you know what I think of you.
Oh, of course I do, Dave.
I can't say any more just now, but we've got our troubles like anyone else. But you can be patient, can't you, Mabel?
Oh, gee, Dave, I like you when you get all serious like that.
There's no one looking. I'm going to kiss you.
Oh, Dave, you shouldn't. Oh, stop it.
Come on, Mabel. Give us a kiss. I've got to go.
Oh, Dave.
Came a dapper block of wood manipulated by a shy, brilliant ventriloquist. Ginger, as the doll was known, became a national figure almost overnight, as his program, recorded here in the 3AW auditorium, was played on stations throughout the country. Here's Ginger with ventriloquist Mal Burko and straight man Terry Deer with one of his comedy routines.
You can't see me, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. How's everything this evening?
Well, don't talk to me. Don't talk. I'm working up a beautiful big peeve.
What's the matter?
Well, I've had a letter. Slinging off. I've had a letter telling me off.
What's it about?
Well, an old lady of 207 has written in saying that I'm a very badly misbehaved little twerp.
The old lady says that you're a little twerp.
Yeah. A twerp and a wort and a earth. She said I ought to be more like little Lord Fountain Pen.
Little Lord Fountain Pen?
That's the kid, I think.
For heaven's sake, Ginger, you mean little Lord Fauntleroy?
Fauntleroy, it is.
Depends on the spelling. Little Lord Fauntleroy.
That's
all right?
the kid, yes.
Good.
I never heard of him.
As long as we get these things sorted out.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard of the cat.
Well, just, Ginger, he was born about 50 years ago.
50?
It might be 80, I don't know.
It might be 80.
It might be anything. You should have squatted up your history better, Mal. Or else the typist wants a new typewriter.
Well, we'll get you a pair of glasses, Ginger.
Little Lord Fauntleroy was. That's all that
Yes.
Tell me, does he wear his whiskers inside or outside his bib?
You don't understand. He was a fictional character. He was a myth.
A myth?
Yes, you know what a myth is, don't you?
Mm-hmm. An unmarried moth.
After the series had been successful for several years, another voice was added to the program. Not as sophisticated as Ginger, the newcomer Dopey still managed to provide hilarious entertainment.
Once again, we present radio's newest king of comedy, Dopey.
Hello.
Hello there, Dopey. How do you feel tonight?
Oof.
Why, what's the matter?
Oh, I spent a terrible night. Never slept a wink.
Well, what did you do all night?
Half the night I was just sitting thinking. And the other half I was just sitting.
Why, Dopey, what's the trouble?
Ginger.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, Mr. Dear. I'm only a boy after all. I'm too young to die.
Dopey, we've told you before, Ginger won't lift a hand to you.
It ain't only his hand I'm scared of. He's got feet, too, remember? Already I've had phone calls from a couple of undertakers scouting for the business.
But Dopey, that's just your nerves. You want something to calm you down.
Never mind about calming me down. How about something to calm Ginger down?
Well, Dopey, Mel and I look after you.
Yeah? Look up the street after me as the hearse is heading for the cemetery.
Now. It's not as bad as all that.
It's worse. And to think I've started reading a new serial I'll never be able to finish.
Listen, Dopey, forget all about Ginger. Let's get on with the program.
All right. I'll start off by asking and answering my own questions.
Asking and answering your own questions? That's too easy.
No, it ain't. You can't do it.
Well, we'll see about that. You start off.
A man ate an orange without removing the peel. How do they do it?
All right, that's your question. You answer it.
He ate the inside first.
Just a minute, Dopey. How could a man eat the inside of an orange without removing the peel first?
That's your question. You answer it.
In a moment, a tribute to a legend and the program he originated. Before rock and roll arrived with its swinging DJs, there was a personality who played music on 3AW 6 half hours a day, week in, week out. He started just before the Second World War and was to continue until the early 60s. Choice of the People was his program, playing requests for factory workers. Such records as Chick Henderson's Begin the Beguine, Al Bowley's Goodnight Sweetheart, Freddie Gardner's I'm in the Mood for Love, and the Luton Girls Choir were just a few of the favourites which were asked for day after day. John Masters was the old smoothie who presented Choice of the People, and he was privileged to conduct the show on the BBC when he visited London in 1951. Here's John at the BBC, September 22, 1951, as guest conductor of Housewife's Choice.
Hello, Housewives. Time for your own program of favourites. Well, from Mrs. Harris of York comes our first request as a welcome home from Canada from her daughter, Mrs. D. Hamilton at Fernley, Bunkers Hill in Lincoln. Cider Night. It's terrific with Cyril Stapleton's orchestra, David Carey, and the Peter Knight Choir. You're listening to Housewife's Choice, and it's 31 minutes after 9 o'clock. Well, there's a very long list of names attached to this request, which comes actually from Mrs. Betty Stokes of 7 Downs Road, St. Stephen's in Canterbury, who wants us to play Love's Roundabout from the film La Ronde for Mrs. Collier, Mrs. Vi Barrack, Mrs. Audrey Rigdon, Mrs. Madge Wenham, and her 2 neighbours. So here it is for you all, sung by Jan Russell.
Amore qui mènera ronde pour la danser ma
Mrs. M. Stevens, who lives at 13 Lancaster Road, Southall in Middlesex, wants a favourite played for her mother's wedding anniversary. So for you both, Sam Brown and his all-star singers and White Wedding.
There'll be a white wedding with church bells ringing. It'll be a wonderful affair. There'll be a preacher waiting and choir boys singing to bless another happy
And finally, Mrs. A. Minks at 50 Pure Street, Woodbridge in Suffolk has a request that I personally find most appropriate to play to you all now, because in a few days I'm sailing home to Australia. So, Mrs. Minks, and to all housewives who listen to this program, may I echo the words of Steve Conway with the Hastings Girls Choir as they sing Good Luck, Good Health, God Bless You.
And keep me still in your arms. I'll be waiting for you. Good luck.
And this is John Masters saying goodbye, housewives. It's been so good to meet you all. Maybe I'll be back someday and be able to say hello again. Meanwhile, of course, your program will be on the air on Monday morning with David Jacobs to introduce your requests.
The late John Masters, creator of 3AW's Choice of the People. I'll return in a moment with one of the most popular nighttime adventure serials.
The Air Adventures of Hop Harrigan.
(1954) was the year Hop Harrigan burst on the Melbourne radio scene, joining such favourites as Dick Tracy, Tarzan, Superman and the Seahounds, which made 3AW's early evening lineup so popular with the youngsters.
A letter from his old friend Chris Lincoln, now operating a small airline in northwest Canada, gave Hop a curious assignment.
and also a warning of danger. However, assured that there was nothing illegal about the job, Hop flew up to the small backwoods town of Duval in northern Alberta. Late in the afternoon, he circled the town, awaiting radio instructions to land on the small private airport. But Bennett, Chris Lincoln's second pilot, suddenly changed his attitude. He warned Hop to fly off, and in no circumstances to land. After Bennett's abrupt warning, the radio went dead. But Hop is still urgently trying to contact him.
Bennett, for Pete's sake, come on the air again. I don't understand your message at all. Come in, Bennett, and explain it to me. Over.
Oh, it's no use, Hop. Obviously, he's not going to say any more.
But why not? All we want to do is land. Can't see what he has against that.
There's something, Tank. And it made him change his mind halfway through the conversation.
Yeah, that's right. He was telling you how to come in, and then suddenly he stopped. Jumping Jenny, somebody might be down there trying to bump him off.
Surely not.
We can't tell, Gail. After all, Chris Lincoln did warn us to bring guns with us.
And what about Bennett down there? Are we going to dump him?
Well, we don't know for sure he's in any danger.
I'm darn sure he is, Gail. And while I feel that way, I can't walk out on him.
Well, what are we going to do then?
The only thing possible. We're going to land. Open the hatch, Tank.
Roger.
So you do come out of the plane at last. I begin to think you are scared of Louis Rouge.
Is Bennett here?
I'm on, Bennett. Harrigan,
Is anything wrong here? These men making trouble for you?
Not exactly.
Now, why the blazes did you suddenly tell us to fly away?
So, you do lie to me, Bennett. These are the Yankees you expect.
All right, Louis, I was in radio contact with them. But that doesn't mean they're the men you're talking about.
No. Why else do you lie to Louis Rouge? Move aside and let me talk with these Yankees.
I wouldn't overdo that Yankee business, mister. Doesn't go well with your red whiskers.
You try to insult Louis, do you? This is funny.
Yeah, or maybe a smack on the jaw would make you see the joke even better.
Oh, don't start that, Tank.
Oh, he is very funny, this one. Bennett, you tell him what happened to others who fight with me.
You're listening to a special radio anniversary program on 3AW. I'll be back with more memories after this break.
You're listening to Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady on 1278 3AW.
Lifeline has been providing a telephone counselling service to the Melbourne community for over 20 years. Nearly 100 people ring Lifeline every day for help with family and relationship problems, health, drugs, separation and stress. To continue providing this vital community service, Lifeline needs volunteers to be trained as telephone counsellors in the Arabic, Greek, Italian, Turkish, Vietnamese, as well as English languages. So if you're concerned about people, can undertake training, and can commit yourself to regular voluntary work, please ring the Lifeline office now on 662-1677.
You don't have to enjoy pork just at Christmas time. In fact, it's pork time right now. Check your watch, make a note of the time and the date, and send it along with your name and address to Pork Products Are Delicious, care of 3AW, 43 Bank Street, South Melbourne, 3205. You'll go into the draw for a Queensland getaway holiday. Enter as many times as you want. Keep an ear out for when the pigs fly on 3AW, and remember the date and time. You could be flying away to Queensland with thanks to Pork and 1278 3AW.
Hi, I'm Robert DiFiodomenico, and I've joined a new team for 92, the Mitchell team. You can hear me each week accepting a dare and doing some strange things to bring a bit of silliness into a serious world. Join me on Fridays on the Mitchell team, and that's only on 1278 3AW.
Monday night at 7 on 3AW was a listening must in 1954. This was when William Boyd, alias Hopalong Cassidy, came riding out of the West to entertain us with his adventures. Boyd made a personal appearance in Melbourne that year, and we put on a special show in a large marquee on the banks of the Yarra in Batman Avenue. At least we tried to, but the reluctant hero was mobbed by our listeners and the afternoon ended in chaos. But the show still went on each Monday night at 7.
The ring of the silver spurs heralds the most amazing man ever to ride the prairies of the early West, Hopalong Cassidy. This famous hero thrills his 60 million fans with action and dangerous adventure. In the role of Hopalong Cassidy is the popular star of the motion picture series, William Boyd. And appearing as that laughable old character, California, is Andy Clyde. There's trouble brewing in Gila Corners where the folks are determined to elect a new sheriff. And the present sheriff is just as determined that they won't. Hopalong and his friend California first learned the seriousness of the situation when they talked to Lem Purdy, owner of the general store.
Well, now, let's see, Hoppy. Your bill comes to $7.30.
What's the 30 cents for?
Those 6 hands full of crackers California's been eating.
The 4 hands. Darn it, don't pay it, Hoppy.
We'll add it on to your jelly bean account.
Where's that fella just went out?
Stranger, maybe here helping Brad Chivas elect that ornery sheriff again.
Seems like everyone's against Sheriff Dodson.
And a good reason. Gunning down a man in cold blood.
Nobody knows what happened to Claude Burns' beef, huh? 800 heads.
Seems like there's enough good folks in town to elect a new sheriff.
Everybody's afraid to vote against him. Brad Chivas' gunslingers watch the ballot boxes, and one of Brad's boys is deputy to count them.
You mean nobody's going to run against him?
You can bet your bedroll there is. I am.
You?
Yeah, me. And I'd win, too, if it was honest.
Well, if you've got the gumption to run against him, we're for you, Purdy.
You're darn right. You got yourself 2 votes already.
2 votes ain't enough.
Well, we can get more for you.
Yeah, and we can do better than that. We'll see that every post and every tree gets a Purdy for Sheriff poster.
Looks like I miscalculated again.
Huh? Oh, hello, Jess. What are you talking about?
Looks like Purdy's going to try his luck at being sheriff.
Who's going to back him?
That Cassidy fella and his sidekick.
What? You sure?
Sure shooting. Hung around outside the store and heard him laying plans.
Oh, they was, eh? Don't nobody know about it.
Looks like they're gonna. That Cassidy headed for the printing shop. Said something about posters.
Why, they can't do that. That broken-down maverick at the shop said he didn't have no ink when I wanted some posters for Dodson.
I don't like the deal, Brad. You can pay me off and let me ride.
You don't get a cent till them cattle is sold.
I've been dealt at from the bottom, but I ain't never hung around till the shooting.
You was hired to watch them cattle back in the door, and you're playing the string to the end.
That's what you say.
That's what this says.
I hope the ink holds out, Hoppy. We're doing fine. About 50 more bill and we'll have enough to cover the county.
You folks see him. Brad's gang ain't got a chance.
Yeah, looks like I'm going to have some explaining to do. Explaining? I told that Brad Chivas I didn't have no ink to run up posters for him. Looks like if I'm staying in business, I'll have to get up a good story.
Well, there's the whole caboodle of them.
That sure is attractive to the eye. Ought to let folks know who's running.
We got a visitor here, Hoppy.
Howdy, Brad Chivas.
You got some ink for these things.
I scraped some out of a can.
And used it to print this pack of lies? For honest law enforcement, vote for Purdy.
I don't want no trouble here, Brad.
Trouble? Nobody tells Brad Chivas he ain't got ink. And find some to print something again me.
Look out, California.
Why, you interfering thing off the running through the branch, Hoppy.
Now get up and get back to your sheriff friend and tell him this is the beginning. And lots more coming, so we rid the county of your kind.
Phil, I hope you enjoyed the little salute, the little tribute to 3AW programs over the years as we celebrate our 60th birthday tonight. And that was a program that Graham Walton narrated for the 50th anniversary of radio.
And still to come tonight, we'll be talking shortly live to John Hindle about his radio experiences. The Verse Comes First will be on tonight as usual. And after 10, we're still to hear from John Blackman and Darren James and Peter James and Dennis Gibbons and David Mann and David McGee as part of our 60th birthday.
We really haven't... The swelling of this program is just beginning, and by 12 o'clock it'll be just enormous, won't it?
You know, I'm sorry that that the Earl of Price and Lord Bell didn't let us do a 12-hour Remember When tonight. We have enough material to last until dawn. Folks, we have only scratched the surface.
To 10, and give me a little clue on that matter of all those actors and actresses with one thing in common.
I will when John Hindle's on the phone, because he knows his movies. We might put that on hold for a moment. I want to tell you, at 1:45 this afternoon, my front doorbell rang, and I thought, who would be coming in unexpectedly? Because everybody, family included, knows not to call without an invitation. As you're aware, at the front door it says, dog on duty, no loitering, no trespassing, no soliciting,
get out,
and no violating.
That's right.
And here my doorbell goes, and I go to the front, and of course Luke goes crazy. He thinks the postman's coming on a Sunday. And there's this very pretty lady standing at the front door. And I'll tell you, no, it wasn't Vera Lynn, but who do you think it might have been?
Well, that's a clue. A girl very similar.
There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover.
Oh, it wasn't that.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when.
Dorothy Baker.
Dorothy Baker. I didn't even know she knew where I lived in Mordialloc. And she arrived at the front door. She was doing me a favour. She had a photo for me, which I plan to show you tomorrow night on Nightline. It's going to open up a very, very, very interesting topic for opening remarks.
Well, don't tell us
But I said to Dorothy, I can't come out, Dorothy, because if you'd warned me you were coming, I would have put Luke either in the back garden or in the car. I said, but all I can do is sneak around the back. So I did, and like I do all my calls, I entertained her on the front fence. It's shocking, isn't it? No one ever gets past.
You don't think the dog is taking over?
I think it's... Well, he's protecting me, and he's protecting my life and limb and my property.
Well, there you are with one of the greatest singers ever on Australian television, and there you are in the drive talking to her. You can't even take her into the lounge.
Well, with respect to you, I said, Dorothy, you're the first star who's ever come to visit me.
Oh, thank you.
With respect to you.
No, there's no respect.
You've only been once. And so, anyway, I don't know, she must think I'm very inhospitable just to talk to her at the front door and then at the front gate. But she brought in something that tomorrow night is going to amaze you. If you enjoy Jack Palance's Believe It or Not. Thank you, Dorothy.
We are concentrating a lot on 3AW's past tonight because it's 60 years on the air, and the memories are as important as the times are today. But we have a current 3AW personality online to talk about the 3AW that he knew and grew up with, and his reflections on the station that he now works. John Hindle, good evening.
Good evening to you, Bruce. And to you, Philip.
And John, don't go home tomorrow night without me showing you a photo which has implications of the third kind. All right, as you leave during the 8 o'clock news, I want you to study this picture before I show it to Bruce, John.
Is it going to cost me a lot of money?
It's a photo that contains an apparition, and that's all I will tell you.
Oh, you're full of mysteries, aren't you?
Oh, is he ever?
You got Bruce on tenterhooks and now me.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are your first memories of 3AW, John?
My first memories are these, that my mother knew Norman Banks in Geelong when they were young.
You would have been like a celebrity just by knowing that.
No, it wasn't that. My mother used to wave Norman Banks's name around the breakfast table in order to get a rise out of my father. But the fact was that we used to listen to him all the time simply because, he knew her, just sort of en passant. And so when he came to 3AW, we came to 3AW.
Right.
And that was really the introduction, I think, apart from the fact that 3AW had so many features. See, live radio, live-produced radio, has now been revived by YouTube, but before that, there really wasn't much, except, 3AW offered it, and we used to listen to it.
Then it became when music, particularly in the 60s, when the rock and roll music came out here, everyone was playing it, and 3AW stuck by their digs and still presented the personalities, didn't they?
Well, to this day, I think they distrust rock and roll, don't you?
Yeah. I think it started, John, when they banned the Beatles.
That's right.
John, are you happier in front of a microphone or a typewriter?
Oh, in front of a typewriter. I mean, you can wander off in front of a typewriter, but on the radio you've got to pay attention. And even though I might sound relaxed there sometimes, I'm all bound up the same way as you are.
Have you ever taken a call where you were completely stumped as far as giving an answer was concerned?
Well, frequently I don't know the answer, but then you say, well, I'll try and find out. But basically, when people... I'll tell you what throws me, and it probably throws you, is when somebody says, I knew your mother, or something like that. And you're talking politics or something.
Yes.
I knew your mother. And it's very hard to continue the conversation.
And you really don't want to go into your private life and talk about your mother and your growing up when there are more important issues on hand.
That's absolutely right.
Or worse, when they pinpoint exactly where you live, John, they say, I lived next door to you in, Smith Street, Collingwood or something, you could kill them.
I remember that one day that happened to Paul Barber. He was not a pleased Paul Barber.
Tell me, the change of program time for you, John, you sort of did great business in the afternoons and now doing drive. Which time slot do you prefer?
Well, I'm really very, very happy at the moment. I just like working, and this is the opportunity I've got to work at the moment at that time, so therefore I love it more than any other time available.
And it would be silly, I suppose, to ask, would you prefer to work any other type of radio? Because that's the one you prefer.
Well, I actually don't think I could do any other. So, I mean, you guys are versatile. You can do anything, but I couldn't work any of the machinery. I couldn't play records. I can't do sort of band. I can't be a disc jockey or play music radio. I can't really do your entertaining thing. I just can do what I can do, I suppose, and that's that, and it's pretty limited.
Of the interviews that you've conducted, I think you said to us, or mentioned to us last time when you were on Remember When, that Barry Humphries is the person that you most, admire or most enjoyed interviewing?
Both, actually. I think Barry Humphries will be remembered as the, well, forget about the sexual side of it, but the Oscar Wilde of this time, because the man he's just a genius. He's a conversational genius.
John, if you were to throw a mythical a dinner party and invite 6 guests from any era, from any time in history or from anywhere in the world, who would those 6 guests be and why?
Oh, that's terrific. Well, you see, if you're having 6 guests, you've got to have 3 talkers and 3 listeners, otherwise nobody will get a word in. So I'll put myself down as a listener.
All right. Well, you can be one of the 6 if you like. You can be the host.
Yeah, she with whom I watch television better be one of the other listeners. I think then I would stick Barry Humphries in a chair. We'd certainly have Oscar Wilde there because I'd like to know what really happened.
That's 4 of you. What about the other 2?
I would like to know, really, how Lennon did it, how he accomplished what he did, how he got away with it. So I'd like to have him there.
And we're not talking about John Lennon now.
No, we're not actually. And I think Peter Ustinov, because he would probably correct Lennon. He knows all about Russia. And then I think a couple of beautiful women. Catherine Deneuve. She might be a listener too, I think. And Tallulah Bankhead.
Speaking of movie stars, this is Tricking Bruce. See if you can help him answer this, if you heard it earlier. There's a common theme here between these actors and these movies, John. I wonder if you can pick it. George Hamilton in Zorro, the Gay Blade. Peter Sellers in The Prisoner of Zenda. Mel Brooks in The History of the World Part 1. Lee Marvin in Cat Ballou. Hayley Mills in The Parent Trap. And Boris Karloff in The Black Room. There is a common thread among those movies. Can you pick it?
No.
No, I couldn't.
Want to have a stab at it? You know your movies.
Well, I do, but I can't see a common thread there.
Before the night is out, you will all know.
Will we? Will it be very late before?
Oh, no, for your sake, I'll make sure it's not, John. So what does radio in the 1990s mean to you, as a listener?
As a listener, it's the most immediate and all-pervasive medium. The house is never devoid of sound. I've either got a CD playing or the radio, more often the radio, because it's company, it's informative, it's exciting, and certainly you learn things there faster than any other way. It's the liveliest medium.
And it also seems to be very parochial. For example, Neil Mitchell works in Melbourne and John Laws works in Sydney. But would the reverse be true? Could it be true?
I think attempts were made in the 60s and 70s to get Sydney personalities here or adopt one of theirs, or of ours up there, but it doesn't really work. Parochialism is the word. I've told the story before about how in New York I encountered a radio station which dealt with only one block in Manhattan. That's really parochial.
Oh, yes, that's more than community radio, isn't it?
Was that in Harlem?
They referred to everybody by name, all their listeners by name.
Was it in Harlem, John?
Pardon?
In Harlem?
No, it wasn't in Harlem. It was in down the south of the island.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the ultimate parochialism. Here,
oh, yes.
Quite often, if there's two stories that we could be going for, we go for the one that's really Melbourne.
Yep, that's true, and that's something that television doesn't and can't do, but radio does fulfill that, and 3AW proudly has been doing that for 60 years. Thanks for joining our party tonight, John.
Bruce, it's a delight to listen to you and to talk to you always. And, Philip, I will look at that picture as soon as you show it to me.
Oh, yes, it might make you a believer, John.
It could do.
Thanks a lot, John.
See you tomorrow on Drive.
See you then.
John Hindle.
We've got personality, and it's just for you. Radio Melbourne, 3AW, 1278.
In a moment, the verse comes first that could win for you lunch or dinner for two at the Bistro up there on the York on Lilydale Resort on the corner of Swansea and York Roads, Mount Evelyn. Wally Elms will look after you. Roll the red carpet out. You can have the fish, pizza, pasta, steaks and seafood that you like.
This is a lunch for four or dinner for four, Bruce?
No, for two, Phil.
But it's lunch or dinner. You have a choice?
Yep. Yes, whatever you'd like to do.
And this is at the Wally Elms estate, folks. You're going to have the time of your life there. If the verse comes first isn't one tonight, if it jackpots, next week it will become a lunch or dinner for four.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, we'll give you just a chance to get ready to dial when we tell you to phone after you've heard the verse.
But right now, Phil, at Cafe Elmer's Bistro or the La Carte Nettleton House Restaurant, you pay under $10 for your main course and $5 for your entree.
Did you know that Alma has been there since the 1920s? I was talking to somebody today who tells me that they used to dry wool skins at Alma.
Goodness me.
The Alma Woolskin Shed, which was in Victoria Street, Abbotsford, near the Skipping Girl in the 1920s. And apparently the aroma from the skins was worse than the smell we used to get from the abattoirs. Well. If you happen to walk past the Alma Woolshed skin joint, that aroma would seep into your hair and your clothes and would be with you for days. And as a matter of fact, if you go into the Cafe Alma Bistro this very day, if you take a hard, long sniff, there are still permeating in the air those wool skins from 70 years ago.
No, all of the walls have been disinfected and bon-amied and dotted. They really got that smell out of the place.
They haven't, you know. If you go to Changi Prison in Singapore 50 years after World War II, and you walk through that old prison, there is still the smell of prison there all those years later.
Oh, well, but certainly not at Cafe Alma's Bistro or the La Carte
I'm not so sure.
Nettleton restaurant. You pay under $10. Now, Cafe Alma's daily menu features seafood, chicken, steak, pastas and soups at under $10 for your main course, plus daily drink specials.
Or if after what I've said to you, perhaps you'd like to order roast lamb.
It's top food prepared by top chefs. Restaurant quality at takeaway prices.
Yes, Cafe Alma is really terrific with top food under new management. Open Monday to Saturday in Victoria Street, Abbotsford, next to the Skipping Girl vinegar sign by the Yarra. And it's really historic. As I say, all those bluestone buildings around the Skipping Girl date back to the turn of the century, when cable cars used to go along Victoria Street.
Yes, well, I have been to lunch at Cafe Alma, and the actual flooring is still the old cobblestones that were there when the horses used to be shunted in to be shoed.
Yes. Yes, and there are still lamb's wool rugs on the floor to commemorate the Alma wool sheds of the 1920s.
Now, you can call and make a reservation or booking on 429-6677 for Cafe Elma and La Carte Nettleton House.
Do you want to hear the good news or the bad news?
What's that?
I think I'm losing my voice. I've gone very furlin in the voice, very husky.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You might need some balsam or Dr. Mackenzie's menthol.
No, I think I'll be able to see the night out, but I just thought I'd warn you.
Right.
That I think laryngitis is coming on.
Well, you stay around. You're not skipping off early.
Thought I might go down to the courtyard and suck on a lifesaver.
The York on Lilydale Resort on the corner of Mount Evelyn where are they? They're in Mount Evelyn, on the corner of York.
Don't ask me, I've never been.
And
I only know the Hollywood Deli and the Embassy Cafe.
The York and Swansea roads up there in Mount Evelyn.
Yeah. And on the way to Warrandyte.
It's beautiful. Right there in the bush, Phil. You can hear wasps and you can hear bees.
You should go over the Black Spur to get there.
No, you don't. It's there, not very far, in the hills.
I've never been asked.
So, here is the verse. Ring us on 696-1278.
After you've heard the verse, listen first and then call us.
And tell us the name of the song.
Everywhere that beauty goes, you are. Everywhere an orchid grows, you are. Everything that's young and gay, brighter than a holiday. Everywhere the angels play, you are.
Well, there we are. That's the verse.
That's a Fred Astaire song.
Yes, I recognised old
So,
Fred.
we'll take your calls on 696-1278. Would you want to play the verse again? Because it was fairly short and a little obscure.
All right, then.
This might help you.
Let's play it. You let us know the song.
Everywhere that beauty goes, you are. Everywhere an orchid grows, you are. Everything that's young and gay, brighter than a holiday. Everywhere the angels play, you are.
Yes.
696-1278 for the verse comes first. You've got a smile on your face.
Well,
there.
I have, because you've really stumped us again this time.
Well, here's hoping.
Yes.
It has to be tough.
Barbara, do you have any idea?
Is it Orange Blossom Time?
No, it's not. That was a pretty song. Good night, Barbara.
Thank you for the call, Barb. Magic Merle.
What do you think it is, Merle?
Another guess. All the things you are.
No, I wish it was, Merle.
We're trapped for that one.
Better luck next time. Bye.
Thanks for the call. Hello, Betty.
You are my lucky star.
Oh, well, I wish you were, Betty, but that's not the name of the song.
You again for your lovely praise.
Yeah, thank you for calling
I
us.
hope you're enjoying our 60th birthday, too.
Yes,
good.
I am, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Doreen.
Hi, Doreen.
Hello, I thought it was you are too.
You are what, my lucky star?
No, you are the promised kiss of sunshine.
No, that song is called All the Things You Are by Jerome Kern.
Thanks for the call, Doreen. Hello, Margaret.
Blue orchids?
Not Blue Orchids, a Dick Todd song.
Thank you for trying. Hello, Ron.
Yes, hello.
What's your answer, Ron?
I was going to say, you are my girl, but...
No, that's not right. Sorry, Ron.
Thank you for calling, Ron. Hello, Mick.
Hi, is it Pennies from Heaven?
No, that was a beautiful song too, wasn't it?
Very nice.
Good night.
I wouldn't be surprised if we do go for a while on this, Phil. Hello to you, Jean. Do you know?
You are my lucky star.
No, we had that answer earlier, Jean, but thank you for trying.
How about you, Esther? Do you have any idea?
Oh, no, that was mine. I thought it was you are my lucky star.
No, I don't know why you were all thinking that, but it's certainly not.
Thank you.
Thank you for holding on, anyway.
I don't even know that Fred Astaire ever recorded that song.
You are my
lucky star.
May not have. Hello, Betty.
Hello. You ought to be in pictures?
No, but a good answer, all right?
Thank you.
They're all very good answers, but...
They're all from the right era.
Bob, do you have any idea?
Stay as sweet as you are.
Oh, and I hope you will too, Bob. Thanks for the sentiments, but not the answer.
Not right, Bob. Sorry. Hello, John.
Yes. You're the top.
No, that's a Cole Porter song. Good try.
Nice try. Dawn.
I was going to say the same.
No, sorry, Dawn, but thanks for hanging on.
Thank you.
Well, you're all around about it, but it's a lovely prize.
We've got a chance to take a couple more calls before the news.
Lunch or dinner at the Wally Elms York on Lilydale Resort up in Mount Evelyn.
And if we don't get an answer tonight, we'll carry it over until next Sunday night.
All right. Hello, Dawn.
Hi. In your Easter bonnet.
No, Irving Berlin's song.
In your Easter bonnet,
but a good answer. Fred Astaire sang that in Easter Parade with Judy Garland.
Thanks, Dawn. Good night. It's Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Is it Lady Be Good?
No, it's not Lady Be Good, but it's from that era.
Phyllis?
You are the breath of springtime.
That's not the name of a song. You are again thinking of a song called All the Things You Are. That's the first line of the song. Good night.
Good night, and thank you very much for trying, all of you. It's
2 minutes ahead of the news. Let's see if we can get an answer.
A nice prize. Hello, Mari.
You're as pretty as the picture?
No.
No, thank you.
Wonder why everyone thinks the song starts with you or your.
It sounds like it's going into the tops.
That's right.
No, I was going to say. Hello, Patricia.
Hi, Patricia.
You are my honeysuckle?
No, that's an old song.
Yes.
Lovely old song.
Good night, Patricia.
Good night. Hello, David. David?
You there, David? If you're not lucky on the verse comes first, maybe you'll do well on the 3 out of 4, the best of 4, after 11 tonight.
Yes, well, let's close it off for tonight.
Do you want to play the verse one more time?
All right, here it is.
This is how it sounds.
And we'll play it again next Sunday night about the same
for
time.
lunch or dinner for 4.
At the York on Lilydale Resort.
Everywhere that beauty goes, you are. Everywhere an orchid grows, you are. Everything that's young and gay, brighter than a holiday. Everywhere the angels play, you are.
After the 10 o'clock news, Harry Beitzel and Tommy Layoff with Bill Jacobs, John Blackman, The Great Debate, Darren James, The Brekkie of 1969 and Ormsby Wilkins.
On 3AW, you're on Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady. Now, 3AW National Network News.
A top of 20 expected for tomorrow. At the moment, it's 16 degrees in Melbourne at 10 o'clock. In this news, violence flares at a Melbourne soccer match. Paul Keating goes on the attack, and Iran blamed for the Lockerbie bombing. Good evening, I'm Anthony Hudson. A police helicopter and up to 50 ground units were called to Connor Reserve in Reservoir tonight after violent clashes between fans at a National Soccer League match between Heidelberg and Preston. Hooligans staged a running battle around the ground soon after half-time and fought again after the match. Police made 9 arrests, while club officials pleaded with spectators over the public address system to stop fighting. Heidelberg attracts much of its support from northern Greeks, while Preston is followed by the Macedonian community. Tonight's violence comes in the wake of renewed political pressure between Greeks and Macedonians. Paul Keating says this week's economic statement will be the largest single package of constructive measures produced by a Labor government. He's confident it will be warmly received by the electorate, but refutes claims it's the be-all and end-all of his career. He's also attacked opposition leader John Hewson, calling him a threat to Australia and the most radically conservative politician Australia has ever seen. Mr Keating has told 60 Minutes while his arrival is ahead in the opinion polls, it's the decision at an election that counts.
He won't stay ahead for those reasons. Australians will not cop that sort of ripping away at the social consensus. They will not cop ripping up Medicare. They will not cop 15% on their food and their clothing to give a tax cut to the wealthy. They will not wear it.
The Palestine Liberation Organization is reportedly blaming Iran and not Libya for the bombing of a United States airliner over Scotland in 1988. Britain's Sunday Times newspaper says the PLO has compiled a secret report saying the mid-air bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie was ordered and financed by a radical rival of the Iranian president. The United States and Britain are seeking the extradition of 2 Libyans believed to be members of their country's intelligence service for the Lockerbie bombing, which killed 270 people. The sister of Himalayan survivor James Scott says the story of his 43-day ordeal with just 2 bars of chocolate is no hoax. Joanne Robertson has told the Nine Network of her 5-week search for Mr. Scott, who disappeared on December 22nd in Nepal. She says she suspects the people who are calling it a hoax are members of the media who aren't concerned about the family's desire to be left in peace. A rugby league player has died after a match at Inverell in northern New South Wales. Greg Cagel reports.
The player was taking part in the Group 19 rugby league trials at the Inverell Showground in 35 degrees heat. Officials say he was replaced in the first grade match, and shortly after leaving the field, he collapsed at the rear of the change rooms. Inverell ambulancemen were quickly on the scene and made several attempts to revive him, but he was dead on arrival at the Inverell District Hospital. Relatives of the player are still being contacted, but it is known he is from the Urella Club. Greg Cagel, Inverell.
Now turning to sports news, and openers Desmond Haynes and Brian Lara have starred in the West Indies' 10-wicket victory over Pakistan in the World Cup cricket match at the MCG. Haynes made an unbeaten 93 and Lara 88 before he was forced to retire hurt. The Windies' winning total, no wicket for 221. Meantime in New Zealand, Sri Lanka defeated Zimbabwe by 3 wickets. Still on cricket, and in the Sheffield Shield match at the Adelaide Oval, Victoria holds an overall lead of 320 runs over South Australia after today's third day's play. The Vics resume tomorrow at 4 for 175 in their second innings, with Paul Nobes not out on 76. News time is 4 minutes past 10. Melbourne's weather after the break.
Hi, Yvonne Lawrence here. Someone asked me recently whether I could describe my jewellery if it was stolen. I thought I could, but when I tried, I realised how difficult it is. Imagine how much hope you would have of describing your favourite ring to the police. Be prepared and photograph your valuables. If they're stolen, the photos provide instant identification and your insurance company will love them.
Keep listening for another Neighbourhood Watch security tip brought to you by the SEC with the support of 1278 3AW.
Hello, I'm Bruce Mansfield. By now you'd realise I'm a strong believer in having a safety switch installed in your home. You'll also know that I recommend having the switch fitted properly. That's why I urge you to contact Safety Electrical Services. They only install the quality Clipsal switch and not cheaper imported brands, and they use only the heavy-duty Clipsal switch for the job. Don't take chances with safety. Ring Australia's leading installers of safety switches. Safety Electrical Services. 562-1144. 562-1144. SEC 9990.
Now we'll look at Melbourne's weather. Partly cloudy with a clearing shower or two, and a light to moderate southerly wind and freshening during the afternoon. The extended outlook for Tuesday becoming fine, a top in the low 20s, and fine conditions for both Wednesday and Thursday, at a top in the low 20s. On the bays, southwest to southerly winds to 15 knots, and afternoon sea breezes to 20 knots, waves to about a metre. After an overnight minimum of 11, we're looking at a top of 20 degrees tomorrow. At the moment, it's 16 in Melbourne. I'm Anthony Hudson, 1278 3AW, and you're with Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady.
Castrol Motor Oil, over a network of 69 stations throughout Australia, presents Leave It to the Girls with Terry Deer.
Let's leave it to the girls. Let's leave it to the girls. If you've a problem puzzling you and you don't know just what to do, ask Terry Deer to help you.
Hi there. This is Randy Stone. I cover the night beat for the Daily. Stories start in many different ways. This one began on the main highway and ended at the foot of a cliff.
Night Beat, starring Hart McGuire as Randy Stone. Before we begin tonight's story, here's your announcer.
May we have your company for the next half hour or so. Start to smile as you check the dial in the Cadbury Zone.
Cadbury's
Cadbury Show, broadcast on a network of 46 stations throughout Australia.
Take it from here. Don't go away when you can take it from here. Why don't you stay and maybe join in the fun now? The show has begun.
Yes, Dick Bentley and Jimmy Edwards will be on hand for the next 30 minutes with June Whitfield, Wallace Eaton and the keynotes, all inviting you to...
This is Henry Simon, bringing you another story from my files here at the Missing Persons Bureau.
In these stories of the Missing Persons Bureau, dramatized for Henry Simon by Ross Napier, names and addresses have, for obvious reasons, been changed.
Quiz Kids on parade with your favorite show. Now's the time for answers to things you want to know.
Johnson & Johnson, makers of Johnson's Baby Powder, the famous Tech Toothbrush and Band-Aid adhesive bandages, welcome listeners on 57 stations throughout Australia
To the Quiz Kids Show.
Not all of those programs appeared on 3AW in the 60 years we've been broadcasting. I think Leave It to the Girls was one that was here. Night Beat, The Cadbury Show, and The Quiz Kids. Take it from here, of course, on the ABC and Address Unknown 3DB.
I feel like doing a couple of baby boomers with you, old buddy. It might be our 60th birthday, but it doesn't mean we have to break with tradition.
All right, well, let's do that and get Dennis Gibbons' memories of 3AW.
Oh, yes. What a nice bloke.
60 years in a moment.
What 1958 Tommy Edwards tune began with the words, "Many a tear has to fall"?
It's all in the game.
That's right. I think it was also a Louis Armstrong song.
All right. Who thanked heaven for little girls in a 1958 screen appearance?
Maurice Chevalier in Gigi.
Top of the mark.
Thank you. And speaking of movies, what film had Clint Eastwood offering music for lonely lovers on a cool, cool night?
Play Misty for me.
When you see me, do you see Clint Eastwood in me when I walk around the building? Do I come across to you as a dirty Harry?
No, you could never be. Although you would like to be, I don't think you would be.
Which movie star do I remind you of? Who have you got in mind? Would it be John Wayne, Arnold Schwarzenegger? Perhaps it might be even someone like Carl Malden or Tom Cruise.
More Joey Brown.
Oh, the man with the big mouth who kept saying in the showboat, Happy New Year! I remember that sequence well.
Here's one. What was officially made the Memo of the USA on July the 30th, 1956? That's the motto, I should say, of the USA.
What was officially made the motto of the USA in 1956? I wonder why 1956, officially the motto of the United States of America.
I don't think it had any bearing on the year or the date.
In God We Trust.
In God We Trust. Very
Thank
good.
you. I wonder why it happened so late in the piece.
Yeah,
you
that's
saw it was
right.
1956 and not 1756?
No, 1956.
And finally, speaking of America, old buddy.
Yes?
Which US president claimed, "I would have made a good pope"? And be careful with this one. It's a tricky one. Which US president claimed, "I would have made a good pope"?
Now, was it Robert Kennedy? Because he was Catholic, but he would never say anything like that.
An hour from now, we'll give you a chance to play the game when we have the best of 3 out of 4 for Eaglemont Cellars.
Would it have been...
It would be the least likely person among American presidents.
Richard Nixon.
Yeah, Tricky Dicky.
Yes, we've got personality. Talk
with personality. News with personality. It's our golden anniversary. 50 years service. 50 golden years. Personality Radio. 3AW 1278.
One of the 3AW old boys was Dennis Gibbons, and he was here for a long time, Phil, reflecting on his years at 3AW. Now, Dennis, you had an announcing school in conjunction with 3AW, or was that an entirely different identity?
No, it started off, Bruce, it seemed a great idea at the time, but all the country station managers said if we could train aspiring radio announcers to a higher standard, they'd pay more money. So I sat down and took ages to devise this course and started a school, and then 3AW sort of came in and we ran the school at 3AW, and we brought out some pretty high standard students, but of course they still paid the same money, so the school folded, only because I wasn't going to train people who were getting, in those days, $80 a week as clerks, to go to a country station and get $30 doing the breakfast session.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dennis, in your book, The Broadcaster Who Laughed, can you relate any 3AW anecdotes?
Well, the whole book was really about 3AW, Phil, because I wanted to call it Behind Closed Microphones. But the publishers had brought out this series of the golfer and the fisherman and so forth. So most of the stories, of course, were about 3AW because, as you know, I'd spent 20 years there, and it was an era when funny things were happening all the time, just about. Nothing funny happens in radio now in that way.
Give us a couple of your favourite examples, Dennis.
Well, I think probably one of the best ones was when the football was sponsored by Heinz in those days, and when the football came from the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the football commentators, they weren't allowed to read an announcement from the Melbourne Cricket Ground. It had to go back and be read from the studio. So Norman Banks and Doug Hayward were broadcasting the football, and Arthur Lister and I were talking. No, Arthur was listening to the races in the studio because he wasn't interested in that particular match, and I wasn't either. And so we had the monitor turned down really low, the speaker, and all of a sudden it was quiet. And the match hadn't been going that long, and I said to Arthur, they've stopped talking. And he said, we'll read an ad. So I read an ad for Heinz soup, and then we crossed back to the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and there was this silence, and then Norman Banks said, after about 15 seconds, he said, we have just observed a minute's silence for so-and-so who died during the week.
Only on AW 1278. We've got personality. 3AW 1278.
On our 60th birthday here at 3AW, thank you to Dennis Gibbons. Phil, a damaged photo can be restored to its former glory at the Framing Nook.
Oh, that's true. You don't have to leave your precious photos with just anyone, Bruce. Leave them with the experts, considered by many to be the best in Australia.
Now, copies can be made in black and white, sepia, and hand colouring in a variety of sizes.
I have a lot of flags and posters at home, and I always take them to the Framing Nook because they do a first-class job there.
Why? Do you frame the flags?
Yeah, and posters especially, which crush easily.
Well, here's a special offer for this month only.
Travel posters, you know?
Yes, the Framing Nook will also give you an extra copy free...
Pin-ups of Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield.
An extra copy free with your photo restoration.
Yeah? Tell me more.
Well, the Framing Nook on the lower level of the Glen Shopping Centre in Springvale Road, Glen Waverley, and 112 Canterbury Road, Blackburn South. Their phone number, 887-9554.
So if you have something worth framing, take it to the Framing Nook, or make an appointment by calling them on 887-9554. I noticed when I came out to your caravan, although you don't have much wall space, you've got some beautiful pictures hanging around the wall, complemented by magnificent frames, obviously from the Framing Nook.
Yes, pictures of me mainly in just in swimming trunks or with barbells in hand.
Oh, yes, but still, family photos are something special, aren't they?
That's true. And
Not too many pictures of Jill around the walls, I noticed.
There's a lovely one at the back of the bathroom door.
What happens for people who've been married 3, 4, 5 times? What do they do with photos of their former wives and their old wedding albums and things?
Well, what do they do with their rings? They must.
I don't know about that.
Do they give it back to their spouse, or do they keep them?
Well, if you go to a wedding and you take a nice gift and the wedding only lasts a few months, don't you think they should give the gift back to you?
Of course they should, especially if they're from the Framing Nook. So go along and see them at the Glen Shopping Centre. As I mentioned, the extra copy free. This is the Framing Nook to give you an extra copy free with your photo restoration.
The addresses again, lower level, the Glen Shopping Centre, Springvale Road, Springvale, and 112 Canterbury Road, Blackburn South. The Framing Nook.
887 9554. 887 9554, the Framing Nook. Okay, let's go to another famous theme from 3AW's past.
Sunday morning at 9:30.
After you've got a giant-sized hangover.
Oh. While Melbourne sleeps with Len Major. It was sort of the news beat of its day on 3AW.
And Len Major would go around the city and suburbs on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, compiling interviews, actualities, news events, and then put it together for Sunday morning.
Yes, he was the first of the roving reporters covering crime and road accidents in our city over the weekend, and these days a highly successful executive of the National 9 network.
Very powerful theme, wasn't it? Almost too heavy, it seems.
It's taken from the movie Things to Come, written by H.G. Wells, the march composed by Arthur Bliss.
Also from the annals here at 3AW, remember Saturday afternoons, cold, wet and windy, and the voices of Harry Beitzel, Bill Jacobs and Tommy Layeff would be heard through 3AW. Great memories of football and football calling.
Well, it could be this year. I'll just ask around because I think it's a very open final series this year. And any team could win it, and don't be surprised if Collingwood might not be the team to bob up this year. What do you think, Bill? Do you think you give them a chance this year?
Sure, I give them a chance. We were discussing it earlier. I give them a chance. I'd like to see them up above 5 or 4 to give them that chance, but they're never to be underestimated.
Tommy?
Always a chance, Harry. A couple of times they've looked as if they couldn't be in it, but while they're in the 5, they're a chance. I think they'll finish in 4th position.
It's a very open year this year, don't you think?
Very open. Anybody could win it, Harry.
There you are, David. So it could be this year, okay? All right, well, that's young David putting through his questions and suggestions. The number to ring is 329-7522. This is 3AW Football. Cool, hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Harry, I'm ringing on behalf of my son,
yes,
who is president of the Collingwood Cheer Squad.
Right.
He would have rang you himself, but he had to get out to VFL Park early this morning.
Sure.
It's about the swearing, the language last week. We did discuss it with him, and he said that he didn't hear any language, and he said that a lot of people that shouldn't be sitting in the front there were sitting there that shouldn't have been there, and they're having a meeting tomorrow to discuss this and find out exactly who's doing the swearing.
That's very good. That's great. And I'm very...
Let you know that something is done about these things.
That's very good. As a matter of fact, look, what we've got to get the VFL clubs to do, we've got to get them to set aside a special area for the cheer squads where nobody else but a cheer squad member can be, so that it's in fairness to the cheer squads, because, here again, if they want to take some disciplinary action, they're not sure whether it's their members or somebody else, is it, at this moment. And I'm very pleased that your phones are, and I'll guarantee there'll be a lot of people very happy that you've taken the time on behalf of your son to do that. because it is important. And we'll certainly be, I think it'll be good for us to check with all the umpires concerning, particularly goal umpires, what they think about the cheer squads. And I'll be able to put that report over next week. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Hello, you're next.
Mr.
On 3AW,
this is no time for levity.
You're with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady on Remember When.
Part of our 60th birthday tonight on 3AW, and it's 23 past 10.
And our special thanks to June of North Melbourne and two of her friends who've baked us this beautiful 60th birthday cake, Bruce.
Yes, it's
with 3AW happy birthday.
A sponge filled with cream, and on the top brown icing sugar, and in white lettering 3AW happy birthday.
Obviously homemade and right from the heart. And June, you tell them, love, I'm only sorry that security at the weekend prevented us from letting you in to share the party with us, but at least you're sharing it in spirit with us through Remember When.
And now to the breakfast session of the 80s, and to John Blackman, an integral part of the team here during the 80s and before that too, in the 70s.
Right.
Here's John and his reflections on 3AW's 60th birthday.
While I've been listening, I've been taking notes and trying to get some sort of chronological order going here. And my association with AW goes back to 1969 when I went to the radio college, the 3AW College of Knowledge, which was run by Dennis Gibbons. And Dennis gave me a little gig on a Saturday night reading the news with, well, she's now Sue Foll. I've forgotten her maiden name now. It was Saturday Night with Sue. And, of course, all those years with Alex Kenworthy from about early 1971, I think, till about 1975, about 3.5 years I did with Alex. And we built up a tremendous relationship and a great family of listeners. And then, of course, I went wandering, as is my want, Bruce, as you know. And then we remember Bruce Personality Squares out at Channel 10. I sat there with you in the canteen. I said, you're the funniest man I know, and I'd love to work with you on radio.
Remember outside Moore's store? Was it Moore's in Chapel Street, Paran, that wet day we had a chat in the car?
In Chapel Street, Paran, in the gutter.
Yeah.
And I said, Bruce, I reckon you and I could be a great double on radio, and I think we proved it too.
Oh, we did it for 5 years, John.
Something like that. I think we won about 15 or 16 surveys in a row, except Peter Meehan knocked us off.
Yeah, we'll never forget that.
By about 0.5%. But I think, Bruce, and I don't say this immodestly, I think arguably you and I were probably the best duo on radio and since Nicky and Graham, and I say that unashamedly.
Well, I would, for pure comedy and voices, I would have to agree with you.
Well, there was a great chemistry there, and I detect that now with you and Phil. The thing I miss from radio today, Bruce and Phil, is nobody's having as much fun and nobody's taking as many risks as we did in the early 80s. And I include, Darren and the rest of the gang. Nobody seems to be having that much fun, and as I said, no one's taking those risks anymore, which I think is a shame because radio is such a communicative medium, and I think everybody's just sort of format-minded now, which is a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah, you've always been a one for taking risks, I'll say that for you, John, and in many instances they worked, in others they got you into hot water, but I'll always remember the risks you took. And in fact, putting us together was a risk, because I remember when we first went to air with Story Time with Derek the Darrow and Uncle Roy and Angela, we got calls saying, from old 3AW listeners of the past saying, who are these two? What do they think they're doing? We got very paranoid about it, but we really bit the bullet and continued, didn't we?
Absolutely. I think in the early days, Bruce, when we first started together, Brian White, who had just come down from Sydney, had never heard of you, or me for that matter, and I said, I've got this guy I want to work with each morning. He said, I don't know, give him 5 minutes or more. Wasn't it? It was 5 minutes between 6 and 7, which grew to 12, which grew to an hour, and then all of a sudden, I think that hour between 6 and 7 rated so well, they finally relented and said, yeah, leave the old coot on till 8:30.
Well, John, I think
We're having a lot of fun. It's a real party atmosphere.
Yes, it sounds a bit like Radio 97 on the Gold Coast at times tonight.
Why? Why?
Oh, no, just my little secret.
Oh, it's lovely. It's really...
Yeah, well, that's what a party's all about, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Could drive a train through some of the pauses and some of the gaps, but that's as it may be. It's 10:27. This is Sunday night on 3AW with Remember When for State Trustees. And we're still to talk to 92-year-old Louise Humphrey, who goes back to the very start of 3AW when we used to broadcast from above His Majesty's Theatre, from the foyer of His Majesty's before it was burnt out, and the old lady, not Louise, but 3AW, moved down to 382 La Trobe Street. She's 92 years young.
But you can't speak like that about Louise.
No, I'm speaking of 3AW as the old lady, like you'd speak of the Titanic as this beautiful lady.
There was a time in 3AW's history when the only bright spot on the day, on the horizon, was a program at 8:30 every morning called The Great Debate.
Oh, Claudia, Ormsby and Norman.
That's true. And they discussed and threw around the issues of the day, Norman taking the right side of the situation, the very conservative. Claudia Wright, on the other hand, very radical and controversial, and the moderator in the middle, keeping it very even, was Ormsby Wilkins.
Yes, they always used to ruffle Norman's feathers by talking about controversial subjects, to his mind.
Yes.
Or topics that he didn't approve of.
As they're about to now, in a replay of The Great Debate.
Because Norman was saying that women surely only have children because they want to have children.
He was saying the fear of pregnancy kept them moral, as far as I can understand.
Look, there are no figures that could possibly present to say that. In fact, these days there are many women who don't even use contraceptives because they feel that perhaps having sex without contraceptives is much more stimulating. This is what's happening in universities. It's the kick of it. For doing this, and this is what they're finding with girls. I think Monash is one of the universities where they've had this problem. Taking the pill for women is the first secure thing I think that's happened to a woman to be able to express herself without the terrible worry of becoming pregnant when she doesn't.